Kansas State versus Iowa State over in Dublin, Ireland is going to be a ranked matchup and one for the ages. Historic, some are even saying. But that does not mean that the coaches poll got it all right. It's far from being all right. We're going to break down why today on this Locked On crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, Christian, feel that beat. I am Nick Marvitsou, host of Locked On Cyclones, and with me today is Christian Rauh, host of Locked On Kansas State. We are going to be breaking down everything around the Farmageddon rivalry as it is Farmageddon Friday. We're starting with the coaches poll and where Iowa State and Kansas State are starting off the season in this preseason poll. Obviously historic for the across the pond matchup, but also meaningful in the Big 12 championship race. Then we're going to talk about Fitzpatrick. George Fitzpatrick for Kansas State is ruled out, at least I believe so. We're going to have a little bit of a breakdown from Christian Rauh, a little bit deeper breakdown on that in the second segment, what that means for Iowa State. And then finally, we're going to talk about the potential for college football red zone. That could be very, very interesting. I can't wait to dive into all that and more. But first, Christian, we got to start with the coaches poll because this has got the attention of literally every single person that is really a fan of college football at this point. I don't know if you are in the same boat that I am. I think they got some right. I don't know if they got everything right. There are 25 spots. Really quick before we dive into this, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I said earlier this week, 25 is hard. It's hard to get 25 questions right? If you give me a 25 question test, I'm gunning for 20. Like, that's a solid B right there. I don't know if they got 20 right even on this coaches poll, putting Kansas State at 20 and Iowa State at 22. I'll let you kind of roll with this here and then bounce it back. What's your biggest gripe with the coaches poll, this preseason poll?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? That we see so many Big 12 teams, but they're at the bottom of the top 25. I think that's the first thing that came to mind, with the exception of Arizona State, who find themselves in the top 12, which makes sense because they were in the college football playoffs last year. You only see Kansas State at 20, Iowa State 22, BYU at 23, and Texas Tech at 24. It's interesting. That's what I will say there. And you're right. You're going to miss some up here. And I'm surprised BYU is still there just because of the Retzlaff news. They have a lot of faith in them. Look, I think BYU can still be a really good team, but I'm surprised they still got a top 25 nod from the coaches poll right off the bat. But looking at Iowa State and Kansas State 2022, going back and forth, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm surprised that's not flipped. You guys were in the Big 12 championship game last year. You won the Pop-Tart Bowl game last year. Now, you did lose some big wide receivers, and that's probably why the coaches are like, maybe that's why. But otherwise, Kansas State sitting at 20, I'm not too upset about that. It gives enough room to grow, enough room to play with a chip on their shoulder, and not to have a hot head heading into Dublin. I am really excited. This is a ranked game heading into Dublin. It's the first ranked game in the Dublin history, and only the second ranked game ever internationally, going back to 1993 Tokyo, which I believe was Michigan State and Wisconsin. If I believe that's what I had in front of me. But yeah, an interesting matchup that we get for Dublin. Only got that much better because now they're going to have numbers next to their name on the scoreboard.
Yeah, definitely. Numbers that aren't the actual score. And before we dive too far into this, those of you listening and maybe even watching, if you're here on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe because it is completely free. You probably noticed Christian a little under the weather today. So we really appreciate everyone in the comments. Drop a, hey, shout out Christian, whether or not you're for or against Kansas State, because this dude showed up every single Friday, no matter what, sick or completely well. And you know, when we, I just really want to get that out of the way. When we look at this top 25, Arizona State getting in the top 11, top 12, whatever, I think that makes sense. I'm not really arguing with that per se. I don't love, and we talked about this on the squad show. It came out yesterday. We talked about this when Drake and I did a crossover earlier this week. It really does feel like they just threw all the Big 12 teams in at the end. Like they were just like, all right, we're working on this group project. It's looking together. It's coming together really nicely. We got some Big 12. We got some SEC. Ooh, throwing an ACC, throwing Clemson at 6 there. This is looking really nice. Oh, shoot. Do we need to put any Big 12 teams in here? Like, is that something we look over at the professor and the professor's just like, Yeah, unfortunately you do. And so they throw in a couple guys at the end there. Obviously, Kansas State at 20. We've kind of said this, but to reiterate, Iowa State at 22, BYU 23, and Texas Tech 24. Literally right in succession there, 22, 3, and 4. And then Kansas State just outside of that at 20. And I, from what I saw, it's Texas A&M and Iowa State that are tied at 21 and 2. So really 4 straight a kind of Big 12 teams in there. To me, that feels like it's disrespect towards the conference. I'm not going to get too far into where is Iowa State. Is it accurate? Is it not? It's preseason. These could be the least accurate rankings of all time. To me, it's just about perception of each team in the conference. And I said for Iowa State, this worries me come the end of the season, because now how many games does Iowa State have to win to essentially earn the trust or the respect of the committee going into the playoff? Can they get in at 10 and 2, or I would say at 9 and 3, they don't have a chance if you start at 22, because you have to crawl your way up, as opposed to an Arizona State that might be able to lose 3 games just depending on the situation, what team, when in the year, by how much. There's so much that goes into these games, but at 11, you've got further to fall and a lot more cushion. What do you think of Kansas State being ranked 20? You obviously mentioned, like, I'm kind of bouncing the exact same question back to you, but in a different way here. You mentioned, like, not enough to really get in their heads, but enough for a chip on the shoulder from the other angle of actually trying to make the college football playoff. Do you think this will have an impact? Because ideally, if you're ranked 1, like, then you have the most leeway, but you also have the most to lose. So I could see this from both sides.
Yeah, let's remember to let's remember too that this is the coaches poll from USA Today. It's not the Associated Press poll that we get every week, and it's not the college football playoff poll that starts later on in the season. So they might be 22 right now, but week 8, when they are, Kansas State's either 7-1, 8-0, same thing for Iowa State. Basically, whoever winds up winning at Dublin, it could be a completely different ballgame for them. So just something to keep in mind on that behalf. I'm with you, though. Putting the Big 12 towards the bottom is definitely, I think, a knock towards the conference. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. But I think it could also mean one other thing, something that we always talk about all the time, that you just cannot predict this conference. You can't. Yeah. It's impossible. The parity from top to bottom is absolutely insane. And maybe you're just saying, we know that there's going to be multiple teams that are good coming out of this conference. We just don't know any of them are going to be elite, where we're talking about them week in and week out as an at-large bid. And that's why we're only going to put them on the bottom line here. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I will tell you this. When the college football playoff polls come out and the final one comes out, 2 Big 12 teams will be in the top 12. We will have 2 teams in the college football playoffs this year.
I absolutely agree. Like, to your point, it is absolutely impossible to guess which 2. It could be Arizona State and Iowa State, obviously the 2 in the Big 12 championship game from last year, or it could be Arizona and I won't say Oklahoma State because I know Cody's watching. Let's say Cincinnati, right? So 2 teams that I don't think anybody is picking to be in the Big 12 championship game could be the ones going to the playoff, just because of the nature of this conference. And in my opinion, that's what makes this conference so great, but also maybe what holds it back. I just thought that was worth pointing out. Is I do think that this is a knock towards the conference as a whole. And you are right. It isn't the AP or the college football playoff. I just think that there are signs, essentially, is kind of what I'm getting at here. Does this specifically impact that? Maybe not, but I do think it's a sign of kind of where the perception of the conference is at. I do want to throw this in here. This is a little bonus segment for you guys listening and watching. Shout out to you guys. We talked a little bit about this in the squad show, but you weren't there, probably nursing the illness. What are your thoughts on making the non-conference tougher? I thought maybe we don't go that route, but I got some comments saying maybe we should go that route. I think that there's a lot of pros and cons to both. How would this help or hurt Kansas State, at least, or maybe the perception of the conference as a whole?
How the Big 12, we should make the Big 12's non-conference schedule tougher?
Right. So maybe to take from a page from Kalani Sitake's book of playing each of the other power conferences with your 3 non-conference games, an ACC, a Big Ten, and an SEC, or just scheduling tougher non-conferences without that actual kind of format.
I don't hate it. Because look, right now, the only person that's getting in, at least compared to last year in historical trends, the only playoff that we know in this format last year, the only Big 12 team that made it was the one who won the conference championship. That has nothing to do with non-conference. So if you want the Big 12 to be seen more as an at-large bid, then maybe find a way to have them compete at a tougher non-conference schedule. maybe we'll see that from a Baylor this year after facing SMU and Auburn. And maybe they wind up being a team that loses in the Big 12 championship, but is still 10-2 because they defeated Auburn and SMU. Like, who knows? And if that's the case, then you can easily put them in as a at-large bid. So I don't hate the idea whatsoever.
No, I think that there's pros and cons to it. I think that it's a little bit of a gamble, right? Like, how much do you trust your conference? And so for me personally, you can go watch the episode from yesterday on Locked On Cyclones, breaking down exactly why. There was 4 main major reasons why I leaned no. But if the conference were to make a move like that and decide we're going to make the non-conference harder, it's not that I would be completely against that. I do think that there are good sides to that for sure. Speaking of good sides, sounds like there's going to be a good side and a not so good side on Kansas State's offensive line in this Farmageddon game. Potentially an opportunity for Iowa State to capitalize. We're going to break that down even more coming up right here after this. Summer sports are in full swing here, Christian. It's no longer football right now. We're talking baseball. We're talking golf. Whether it's golf on the green or high-stakes soccer action even, it's getting intense in the summer. FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting, and you're already following the action. Why not just make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are where? Getting sunburned on the beach, not exactly following the game super, super close. It's easy to use, it's fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. It adds that thrill to any given game. It's the best. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Iowa State, Kansas State, across the pond, maybe the most exciting game of this entire college football season. I don't think you'd be too far off if that was your pick of the best game of the season. You're here with Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones and a Locked On College crossover, what we call Farmageddon Fridays. So we might be a little bit biased, but I don't mind it because this really is going to be a very elite matchup. We talked just about the rank of both of these teams, a ranked matchup over in Dublin, Ireland. It's going to come down to the wire. I personally think so. And all of this breakdown we've done this summer, talking about every position group where each team has a slight advantage. At the end of it all, I thought this is literally going to be a one-possession game. However, there has been a recent development. George Fitzpatrick potentially, to my understanding, not going to be playing in this game. Is that correct, Christian? And also, what does that mean for the entirety of the Kansas State offense?
Yeah, first of all, if this is the best game of the college football season, I hope that's not the case. One, I hope it's a great game, but I hope that we don't get the best out in week 0. Like, I really hope we have a great college football season ahead. But I do think it's going to be a great game. Don't get me wrong. But I hope it's not the best game just for the fact that it's on August 23rd, right? Just for my mental psyche. Yes, there's been reports that George Fitzpatrick, starting left tackle, at least newly named starting left tackle, will not be available week 0. He did suffer a medical situation at practice. He's recovering from that. He was newly named the left tackle at media days. He's a transfer from Ohio State, had a good spring. Spring camp was only 10 practices. So take that for what you will. But yeah, he will not be available week 0. So that means that there's going to be a new person in at left tackle, whether that's Terrence Enos, whether that's potentially John Pastore, just a couple other players that could be in that spot. And look, I think George Fitzpatrick's great. Chris Kleiman came out and talked about him on media days where he's worked himself up the depth chart to become that starting left tackle. But he transferred over from Ohio State with not much playing time, and he was named the left tackle at media days. So as of right now, and I mean this in the best way possible, you're not really losing much at the moment because you are still trying to figure out your offensive line. You're still trying to figure out your depth. And when he comes back, hopefully in time for conference play, if you're going to might as well take your time and not have to worry about him in the non-conference schedule, then you should be in a way better spot. But obviously starting the season off in week 0 against Iowa State is usually not the situation that you're normally in for teams. This would probably be not a story if you were playing North Dakota or South Dakota week 0 or week 1 like you normally do. But instead you're playing Iowa State, a conference rival, the best rival in the conference, week 0, the first game to start college football. So I think it's interesting. And No, I do. I think it's interesting. I think it could be a complete game changer, to be completely honest. So if we're already talking about him potentially being the starting left tackle, there's obviously some rooms for concern now because their number one choice at arguably the toughest position on the offensive line is no longer going to be there. What does that mean for your defensive line, your pass rush? Do you think that could help you get to Avery Johnson faster? And if so, who do you think steps up?
Oh, absolutely. The way I see it is this is a golden opportunity that Iowa State has to take advantage of. And I get what you're saying. This at this point in the season or of the calendar year or whatever you want to call it, it's not exactly ironed out what the offensive line looks like. Same thing on the Iowa State side. The way I understand it right now is it's kind of up in the air. We're testing all sorts of configurations. And to that point, I am going to bounce one more question back at you here in just a few minutes. I'll answer yours first. But Iowa State doesn't even know exactly what's going on their offensive line. So Kansas State does have that going for them. They will probably be able to figure this out. They've been kind of in that process of who is going to be our left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. Like, what does that lineup actually look like? They've been testing it. That's what the offseason is sort of for. I think better now than in week 8. If it's me, that's my guess. Granted, you are still going into Iowa State, a huge, huge game for Kansas State this upcoming season. Now, to answer your question about this game in particular, this is, like I said, the golden goose. You have to take advantage here. Is it Vontre Malone? Is it Trey Verdone? Is it Kamari Moore? Is it Tomatoa McDonough? Like, there are Dominic Orange, like so many guys. Obviously, Dominic Orange more on the interior, but who knows? Maybe we bring a few linebackers off the edge as well. Like, I think Iowa State has to game plan for this and try to get out to a lead on the offensive side of the ball early. If you can make Kansas State have to pass, that then you can leverage that potentially an experienced left tackle or potentially underprepared left tackle, right? If Kansas State is able to stay close or get ahead early and able to run the ball, I don't think they'll suffer as much from the left tackle being subbed out. I think you have to get into a position early, which is not what I thought was going to happen in this game from Iowa State's perspective. This is a little bit against what I've been saying. If they can get out ahead early and force Kansas State to pass, that's where I think that they're probably their strongest now. Previously, I thought just hang on defensively, allow the offense to get into the rhythm of the game. It'll be the first game without Higgins or Knoll. Like, we can really find out, where is the ball going through the air? Are we going to rely on the run? What's the weather look like? Is it obviously adapting throughout the game? Rain early, rain late, potentially. Who knows? There's all these kinds of situations, right? You can find yourself in any one of those. And I thought if you lean on the defense early and strike late offensively, that's where I thought Iowa State was going to thrive. Now I think it's the exact opposite. I think they need to get out early and force Kansas State to pass. Maybe it's Tomatoa McDonough off the side. We've only heard that this guy is an athletic freak. I think he can get it done. Maybe he's not the guy that's on the left side, or I guess on the right side of the Iowa State defensive line, but you get what I'm saying. Could be any one of those guys. Probably not Dom. Probably not Big Citrus, but it might be. Who knows? Maybe we got a special package just for this exact situation. I will say I know Iowa State hasn't, to my knowledge, been planning for the Kansas State game yet, so that is maybe to Kansas State's advantage, maybe not. I don't know. That you kind of got to take that how it is. I assume it would be an advantage to Iowa State. Last question I've got for you here on this front is, I said probably better now than in week 8 because the team isn't used to Fitzpatrick being on the line, right? The line isn't used to how Fitzpatrick plays. Flip it the other way. Can Kansas State actually suffer from this because they will spend a few weeks getting ready for conference games without Fitzpatrick? Then you try to plug in this guy who might be the best option, but he's not used to how the rest of the offensive line plays. I know this isn't about Farmageddon, but does this impact Kansas State down the road?
It could, but I would say no. I would say that I'm with you. Now, you don't obviously want this to happen at all. And for the record, he's doing much better. Coach Kleiman said that he's back in Manhattan. He's been at the facility a handful of times. He's just day-by-day basis. He doesn't have a timetable, but he's doing a lot better. That's what he said at one of his pressers this last week. And I think it's better that it happened now, if it's going to happen at all, because you have a lot of offensive line transfers, and you want to be able to get them the time that they can prove that they are ready to be on this team and be in the rotation. Look, this season's longer than any other season that they've had over the past 4 or 5 years. Same with you. Starting week 0, starting spring a week early, starting fall a week early. And if they get to the college football playoffs, you're going farther into the season. So depth is going to be important. I assume by week 8, there's probably going to be another offensive lineman, most likely injured. So having this one taken care of, hopefully, and handling it later on I'd rather have it happen now, personally, although it's going to be tough because you need everybody firing all cylinders against Iowa State.
Yeah, no, I think we're in the same boat. Like, you wouldn't want this to happen ever. I was just curious what your thoughts were potentially on the offensive line is so finicky. Like, you never are really able to nail it down. It feels like it's one of those positions that it just has to be just right. Like at 211 degrees, it's not boiling. But at 212, we found it. 1 degree difference. That being said, let's talk about something else that's red hot in the college sports world right now. Red zone. Could that be coming to college football? We'll talk about that coming up right here after this. Sundays are not when college football is played. Here at Farmageddon Fridays, Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Cyclones crossover, college crossover, I suppose. We are still fans of the NFL and Red Zone. But what if it came to college football? What would that mean for the viewing experience? I guess maybe for you and I, or all of the fans out there listening, hitting subscribe, commenting down below, doing their due diligence, watching their favorite show first thing every single day. Shout out to you guys. I believe it was Roger Goodell that threw this out there, the opportunity, the idea of a college football red zone. I do believe, to my knowledge, this was kind of brought about by the purchasing of some NFL rights by ESPN. It's pretty dicey. I didn't get to quite read all of the article, but I'm more focused on the concept of a college football red zone. What do you make of this? Would this be awesome? Would this be not ideal? I do think that there's people on both sides of the fence here. So where do you lie, Christian?
Yeah, it'd be interesting, right? And yeah, for the record, NFL, ESPN came to a partnership. ESPN now has some rights like NFL Red Zone to be on ESPN. Also, they did get the rights to Red Zone. ESPN owns the rights to the naming of Red Zone. So that's why that came up, and Goodell hinted that in an interview that they had the rights. They can do that for other sports. And he hinted, of course, college football. And in the back half, I think the NFL now owns like 10% of ESPN or something like that. I think it's interesting. I really do. I think the only way you'd be able to do it is you'd only be able to use ESPN's games, right? Like you wouldn't be able to pull in like the games that are on Fox, Big Noon. You wouldn't be able to pull in the games that are on CBS. But all the games that are on ESPN or the Disney channels like ABC, things like that, ESPN Plus, which is plenty on a Saturday, you'd be able to pull those in for a game day, or excuse me, for a red zone. What would be really interesting, though, is who would be the host. Like initially, you'd think, because of ESPN, you think Pat McAfee would probably be the first choice, right?
Yeah, that would definitely be one of the first ones. I saw a proposal that someone on the internet made of Stephen A. and Pat McAfee. That would be a dynamic duo. I don't even know if a duo could run a red zone. There's so much going on at any one time. I feel like it'd be a lot for two guys to have to handle. It's kind of like, it's if you got one guy to do the job, it's like takes half as long as two guys, whatever that saying is, something like that. It's a reference to the workplace.
Can we clone Scott Hansen? Can we do that? Because there's no way he could do it. There's no way he could do it 2 days in a row. But
if anyone could, though, it would be Scott. I will say that the way he works is, I don't think it's human. So if anyone could do it, it'd be Scott. If we could clone him, I think that's option number 2 behind him doing it back-to-back days. Option 3 is probably you, Christian. I think you're probably up for that job. I heard a couple rumblings. I put in a good word, of course. I thought you were pretty capable of that. No, as far as the concept of a college football red zone, I think that there is potential for that, but we've also seen failed red zone knockoff attempts before. And I think that one of the main points is what games would actually be on that red zone. I think that's a really good point. Now, what market does it tailor to is another question. Could you try to snag a bunch of smaller schools? Obviously, like your big games, it's going to be tough to get rights to those. And do you really even want those on red zone? Probably yes. I mean, seems like a little bit of a not ideal question there, but you get what I'm saying is there are so many questions to have to answer, especially in college football where there are so many games. I think the worry for everybody right now is the ads, because red zone was 7 hours of commercial-free football, and now it's 7 hours of football, I think is what I don't even know what they say. They don't say commercial free anymore. It's just straight football is maybe what it is. I didn't watch last season, or once the ads broke in. I think that's maybe everyone's concern, and you don't want to end up in a situation where it's kind of the same as watching a singular game, but with maybe not your favorite commentator. I I think the concept is there, but until we can prove that anyone besides Scott Hansen can do this, I'm going to be skeptical. I believe the NHL has tried this. It went okay. I think that if I'm not wrong, they did this for the Olympics as well. It was like pretty good. It wasn't quite great. I think Scott Hansen's maybe the only guy that can do this, and maybe that's Roger Goodell throwing that out there to acknowledge, like, or make people think like the NFL is still like where we're at for a reason. I don't know if I would be watching a full red zone if it's not Scott, personally.
Yeah, we've seen college baseball do it during the World Series run up and the playoffs, the regionals, and it's kind of interesting, and they get a lot of good support for it, but it doesn't happen just during the regular season. And then baseball, MLB does big inning, and they only do it like a certain amount of days of the week, though. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think it'd be fun to try. I think it'd be really fun to try. And yeah, you're right about the ads. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I would be all for it. And hey, if they called and said, "Hey, we need you to host as long as you don't have the flu," I'd be like, "Hey, count me in."
Oh, you'd kill it. I just know you would. You'd probably be a little bit, maybe towards Kansas State. That maybe that's a knock on your resume there.
Me?
Who, me? I know me personally. Like every time the Cyclones were on, I tell the producer, "Don't take them off the screen. I don't really want to watch any other game." Why are we changing to Ohio State, Michigan? Who is watching that? Nobody. Everyone is watching Iowa State, Kansas State. This upcoming game is going to be epic over in Dublin, Ireland. I know that they've already got stuff set up. I've seen some pictures and I've got people telling me that they're about to head over there. The environment is going to be absolutely electric. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Shout out to Christian for fighting through the flu there. Christian, do you have any last final thoughts on the game before? Because we are really counting down the days here. I'll give you one more shot. Is there anything on your mind about Farmageddon?
Well, we only had 2 more Farmageddon Fridays until game time after this one. So keep that in mind. And then Kansas State just came out with their helmets. They got some Celtic stripes.
Yes.
Looks pretty good. It's not as fancy as I thought we were going to go, but still pretty nice. So I'll take that.
Yeah, the helmet game is, I've heard, what wins and loses games. So the way I personally perceive Iowa State's uniforms, they're very important to me. So anyway, be sure to hit subscribe. Be sure to hit like down below. Leave a comment. What did you think of College Football Red Zone? What do you think of the the preseason poll? I'm interested. I'm always interested at Locked On K-State or at Nick_Marv on Twitter as well. Until next time, Cyclone and Kansas State fans, stay safe out there. I feel like the stripe on the helmet might be too much for Kansas State. I don't know.
Well, at least we'll actually use our team colors.